But I think the smaller the town, even I'm like jealous. We can just lock in. There's one place everybody goes to lunch, and I would just make that part of what you do. Like, see yourself as the unofficial mayor of your town. In our role, where they tell you to say no, I say no, say yes. If somebody invites you to go to lunch, say yes. If they invite you to go watch a football game, say yes. Like, be with people. I wish every pastor would see himself as the lead missionary in their community.
Welcome to the Pastor's Lab podcast, a new resource for helping church leaders think biblically and strategically about the local church. In each episode, we'll talk with thriving church leaders on the front lines of ministry across the nation, discussing best practices, innovative ideas, and healthy habits. I'm Ronnie Parrott, and I believe churches get better when their leaders learn together. If you're new to the podcast, I want to encourage you to subscribe or turn on all the notifications so you can get the latest content we're producing. Thanks so much for joining us today. Each episode, I'm joined by a co-host to help me interview our guest, and today's co-host is Dr. Josh Powell. Josh is the senior pastor of Taylor's First Baptist Church in Taylor, South Carolina. Josh has been a guest on the podcast before. Welcome to co-hosting duties, Josh. How are you feeling about today?
Man, I am excited, thankful to be on here always with you, Ronnie, and looking forward to a great conversation with a good friend, Dean Inserra. So looking forward to this. All things Tom Brady are about to come our way.
That's right. The day's guest is none other than the lead pastor at City Church in Tallahassee, Florida, my good friend, Dean Inserra. Welcome to the podcast, Dean.
Great to be with you guys. Two fine pastors from the Carolinas. Here we go.
I feel like I've got two of the greatest pastors in America right here.
It's kind of a little boastful to say about yourself. That's fine for Josh.
That's great. Well, yeah, for sure. I do want to take a second here to give Dean some time to introduce us to himself. I know many people will be listening who may not know you, Dean. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. Give us the 1 to 2 kind of minute synopsis overview of who Dean Inserra is and where you're at.
Yeah, I'm pastor in my hometown of Tallahassee, which I feel is kind of unique. Grew up here, and if you'd asked me when I was a kid, like 13, 14 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have told you be a pastor in Tallahassee. So I'm really thankful to have a chance to do that. My wife, Chrissy, and I met on a blind date pre-social media. So it was truly a blind date set up by a mutual friend. And we got married 2 years later, almost to the date. And we have 4 kids, an interesting age range. Our oldest is 17, and our youngest is 17 months. So that's kind of our unique world right now. And Pastor City Church in Tallahassee, a church we started in my parents' living room, just because their house was bigger than mine, with 20 people. And we are 17 years in. It's been a really neat story of ministry here in Tallahassee, in the capital city.
Man, that's awesome. A lot of people I talked to going through seminary and such had this desire to sort of put their yes on the table to wherever God would call them to. I grew up in Knoxville, never really having a desire to kind of go back. I love my family. I love the city. But I was just kind of eager to get out and see where the Lord took us. But you decided to move back to your own hometown to plant City Church. Tell us a little bit about that journey and what led you to do that. Maybe what have been some of the highlights and challenges along the way as a kind of a homegrown guy in your hometown?
Yeah, and Tallahassee has just always been home. And I've always been a pretty connected guy locally in terms of just very invested in Tallahassee life. I know it kind of sounds vague and generic, but just always been just very social in town and just connected to a lot of people. At Florida State University's here, been connected to sports through that. And so it's always just been about Tallahassee for me. That's just where I always saw ground zero for ministry. And a big thing was that I came to faith here in Tallahassee through a Fellowship Christian Athletes retreat. And I was raised going to church every single Sunday, but never heard the gospel. I was raised mainline Protestant. And I realized after I came to faith that a lot of my friends were in the same boat. If you asked them if they were a Christian, they'd tell you yes. And their reason for believing that had nothing to do with what the Bible would actually call saving faith. They would say they're a Christian because basically they're not Jewish, they're not atheists, they're not agnostic, they're a good person, and their grandma took them to church. You notice in that answer I just gave, has nothing to do with Jesus. No need for salvation in their eyes. Christianity was more of a hobby or kind of a moral compass, good luck charm kind of thing. And that was me. And I was radically saved out of that. And when I say radically, my eyes were opened. And I went, oh my word, I've been in church my entire life and never heard this before. And I really just saw that as a huge need in Tallahassee and believed that if you could reach the capital city of Florida for Christ, that you can have a worldwide impact from here, and we still believe that. And so it's always been about here. I wanted to see something big happen here in this community through the local church. So I believe it's God's plan for His people as the local church. So we started 20 people in the living room. This is before we're working the Send Network. This is before there was a Send Network. Kevin Ezell, who is the president of the North American Mission Board, was not there yet. So the church planting just wasn't really talked about very often. You were kind of viewed as either in rebellion or you couldn't pastor a real church. So you had to go plant a church. And it was fine if you planted like way far away in California or something along those lines. They thought that was great, and they'll pray for you, and they'll give you a book to read and that kind of idea. But church planting down here just wasn't really happening or very thought highly of, and really was kind of a mystery to it because people just weren't really doing it. And we set off as Lone Rangers. We had no sending church. That wasn't language at the time. We didn't know what that even meant, and just started having gatherings and coming together and prayed that God would build this thing in our city.
Dean, that's awesome. Let me ask something real quick, if I can. For me, I was coming up and I had to wrestle with that very thing. Am I going to go into an established church and try to help it out, or am I going to be a church planter? And so you're talking about doing that before there's even so many different networks and everything. Now, how about a guy coming out of seminary or thinking through those very issues right now? What are some things that they could think about in their own ministry of whether or not they're designed for church planting or they're designed for going into established church, maybe revitalization?
Yeah, I think you have to go somewhere. We only have so much time, right? And I'm not trying to throw away the need for patience and the long game. Like, two things can be true at the same time. There's a long game and there's plowing in ministry. At the same time, we don't have forever. So I would just really worry for a guy that wants to go somewhere where he can't lead. I don't mean Lone Ranger, no accountability. I'm not talking about that. I'm all for plurality in those things, but I want to see guys go somewhere where they actually can direct the church and can have vision and can lead and can build trust. So I just would not just go take any other church is what I'm saying. And what happens a lot of times is I think we kind of use the word calling as a crutch. I believe in a ministry calling, but I think sometimes it could be an excuse that you can just go pastor anywhere because you just want to get paid by a church. And I don't want to just get paid by a church. So I don't want to just go pastor. I don't have to be a pastor. The Lord's allowing me to in His grace, and I'm grateful for that. I'm trying to be faithful with how He's positioned me and what He's given me. But I just don't want to go pastor anywhere. I want to pastor somewhere where I see a need, where I can lead a church that's hungry and wants to make disciples and reach their community and send out missionaries. So I would rather be I really truly mean this, and y'all might disagree on this comment, but I'd rather be the manager at Chick-fil-A than pastor at a church that I wasn't passionate about or excited about or saw an opportunity to make a big impact in our community. I don't mean it has to be a big church. I don't mean that. I mean a church that eagerly wants to see disciples made in their community. So in other words, Josh, it's never just been a job thing for me. Not that I think it is for very many people at all. I think almost all guys are in this because they're called to it. But you're not going to see me be the guy who's here 3 years, there 5 years, there 4 years, just kind of on the way. It's just not how I'm wired. And I don't think you can make the biggest long-term impact for that. I want to see guys eventually say, this is the final move. We're going to buy like graveyard plots here. I want to see guys do that once they find that place. And I'm not saying it has to be the first place you go to, but once you lock it and do that, I think that's how long tenures are made. Trust is low in pastors right now. You go into a church and you're their sixth guy in 17 years, and so I think there's just power in longevity and rootedness. That's the word. I'm a hometown pastor. Rootedness. You don't have to be from your hometown to be rooted, but you need to actually lock in and invest where you are for the long term there. So guys coming out of seminary, I would say we do need church planters, but don't plant a church just because you want to preach. And that's what happens a lot of times. That's kind of like the dirty little secret in church planting is some guys plant a church, they just want to preach. And they're 25, they're 26, they know they can't do that for a while at another church as the associate guy or the youth guy or the singles guy or whatever. So they go plant a church not because they're dying to reach Charlotte or because they really want to, make this impact, because they just really want to preach. That's not a great reason to plant a church. I want you to plant a church because you see a need, believe the local church is a way to meet that need, and believe that this is the best actual way to do that. So yes, please go into church planting, but not because you just really want to preach really bad. Go into it because you see yourself as a missionary going to that place. And if that's not for you, then go somewhere where you can actually really make an impact and have a long-term ministry somewhere and not be handicapped 24/7 by 1,800 red tapes and bureaucracy. And we just don't have time for that. And so go somewhere where you can lead.
I've watched you grow and thrive there. I've watched City Church reach people, train leaders, send them out. It's been you've been a great testimony of someone who has modeled longevity in ministry. And I know you enough to know, man, you've probably had other opportunities come your way. You could have bailed along the way and done other things. What have been the reasons that you've decided to stay? Like overall, what was it that said, I want to be here, and here's why I want to be here?
And I don't think it's wrong to go somewhere. I don't think I'd be in the wrong if I did say yes. Someone called and asked me to do that. I've had opportunities, for sure. And for me, it's always been, at least up to this point, and Lord can change this tomorrow, but just not a desire to do that. Like I've never seen this like as a career thing. I mean, yes, I get paid. Yes, that's my job. Obviously I have a family, but I just never have seen it that way. It's always been about here. And Jimmy Scroggins, our mutual good friend, was up here one time, and he went around town with me. And again, please don't take this pretentiously. I'm just trying to give you an idea of just kind of how we do ministry here. And it sounds pretentious, but that's not my heart. So please hear that. But we're going around, and we're at Starbucks, and we go to Chick-fil-A, and we walk in. We know everybody in the place, not literally, but like we're saying hello to people, and they're saying hey to me, and they know me, and I coach their kid in baseball, and then we go down to Florida State and walk in the coaches' offices, and I know all of them. We can just walk right in, and just these kind of things happening. And Jimmy looked at me and he goes, "You can never leave here." And I just laughed and said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You go to another city tomorrow, you would never have this in a million years. Like what's been created here through your rootedness and the opportunities you've had as being a." So this morning, for example, as the day we're recording this here, I had a high school classmate who died a very tragic death, like the kind of stuff that just is we need to talk about in terms of the details. And I had not seen him in probably 25 years. And his parents reached out to me immediately. They don't go to our church. They're not part of a church. They're not evangelicals by any sense of the word. They probably have a loose mainline background. And they called me. And the reason they called me was because in their eyes, like I'm the pastor and I know their son and I went to school with him. So like that's like you just can't recreate that anywhere. And so I do more weddings and funerals of parents, friends, and of friends' parents and their grandparents, and they don't even have a connection to the church. But just because I'm their buddy, and we played football together, and we were in high school, and I just kind of I respect Jimmy a lot. And I just kind of listened to him when he said that to me, and I just kind of received it. And because there's a temptation sometimes to go, hey, what else is out there? Could this bigger city, with more reach and. That's all. I think those are good thoughts. How to reach as many people as possible, for Christ through the local church. But it's just always kind of come back to this is where the Lord has me, and this is where my kids are thriving. I don't want to uproot them. And both sets of my parents are here, and also I think that Tallahassee needs City Church more than it needs me. But I have asked a lot out of people for 17 years. And ask them to sell out to this vision and to go all in and to be at our church 15 years ago when they had teenagers, but we didn't have a youth ministry because we just weren't able to yet, just structure-wise, and asked them to stick it out and help create it. I've just asked a lot out of people. And for me, if I left, I would feel like I'm just kind of bailing just for something greener and better and bigger. And, and please hear me, and I'm not condemning those who do that. I'm saying in our situation, I feel like it would just do a lot of damage. And one day I'm going to be gone. I'm not going to be the pastor of City Church one day, obviously. But I want to faithfully pastor this church as long as I possibly can and walk along the people that help build it. That's
great. I did an interview recently with Bryant Wright and Clay Smith.
Oh, nice.
Bryant, he was kind of like you, stayed for the long term until the time was right to hand it off. And you look at Johnson Ferry Baptist Church today, and you look how, man, just an incredible church it is. And you remind me a lot of Bryant's attitude and heart. So I really appreciate that about you.
Oh, thank you.
Dean, you definitely have I love it too, and I get what you're saying. You have a heart for your people, for your community. Talk to me about how you take that and translate your heart for Tallahassee to your people. Now, how do you get your church people to say that's it too? I mean, a lot of those college towns like Tallahassee are pretty transient. So you have a lot of people coming through and going out. So how do you take that heart for Tallahassee and translate it to your church so they have a heart for your community as well?
Well, we lose so many people every year, not because they're mad, but because they move. And not just students, but also in government work. You can only work so high up. Because there's limits. So the job market is not massive here, in Tallahassee. So we lose folks to Atlanta, Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, all the time. So I can make you a list of hundreds of people, that have left their were key players in our church because of jobs and because of moving. So I want folks to see how that we view people's time here for our church as a stewardship. Like God has brought these college students for 4 years, these state workers for 8 years. Or if you work for the DeSantis administration, you're just here for a short time. And we reach a lot of those folks. And to say, okay, while they're here, we need to make sure that our mindset is that we are trying to pour as much scripture and life in the church in them as possible to be able to send them out to be faithful. So our college pastor regularly says that his hope for our college students, once they're reached, we're trying to reach campus first, reach a lost campus. But once they're reached for Christ and baptized and become part of our church family, that his goal is to create great church members. Because we want someone, if they move to the upstate of South Carolina, for you to say, man, that guy from City Church, man, that's one of the best church members we've ever had. They're wired different. They came in here ready. And so that's really the mindset. Because we have people all over the country who were part of our church at one point. And not because we sent them in some kind of formal way, just because they moved. We try to see that as an opportunity that God brings people to Tallahassee for a season, and instead of going, they're only here 4 years, let's celebrate that and get as much out of those 4 years as we possibly can. And so I also want our folks to see that the biggest mission field for them is our community. It's where we live first. Yes, we're doing things outside of here. The Lord has given me a ministry outside of Tallahassee. We send missionaries outside of Tallahassee full time. We're very invested in all those things. But first and foremost, Tallahassee is our center place for mission. And for folks to see that. One of our elders, he owns 2 Chick-fil-A's in town. And he says a breakthrough moment for him in his life was when he realized he didn't have to get a paycheck from a church in order to have a ministry. He's a lay elder. And that kind of mindset. So we talk about that kind of stuff all the time around here. So we want our folks to always see that as mission opportunity. And we really push the significance of Tallahassee a lot. Not everybody thinks their hometown or where they minister is. You ever notice every church planner, when they give their prospectus, that town is the most lost city in the history of mankind and the fastest growing county in America. Everybody always claims that. Yeah. It's how is every county the fastest growing county in America and the most lost? So we don't say that, but we say, look, if you reach the capital, no offense, guys, but of the most significant state, okay, in the most significant country. No offense to our listeners in Poland right now, but the most significant country. So think about this. We believe that from our city, we're not Ocala, we're not Melbourne, we are the capital of Florida, okay? You reach the capital of Florida, which I believe is at least on the Mount Rushmore of most significant states in America in terms of what happens here, what comes from here, then obviously the most significant nation in terms of what comes out of here. I think you can make a worldwide impact from this little town on the Florida Panhandle. And we're not afraid to talk about that to our people. It might sound strange to those outside of Tallahassee, might roll their eyes, but here in Tallahassee, that energizes people, gets them excited, and makes them realize that actually something great can happen from this town for the gospel.
Man, I love that. Speaking of DeSantis, since you brought him up, is it true that you're kind of like his Billy Graham? Is that true?
I'm definitely connected to him. A lot of his staff, Inner Circle, major staff, are part of our church family. His kids come to our Vacation Bible School, which we call City Church Kids Camp. He was here for the last day, which is Parent Day, and they come sing the songs and all that. He rolled in, sat in one of the rows, and did the hand motions and sang the songs with his kids. I'm not his Billy Graham, but we're definitely connected and have a relationship. Great. Yeah, big baseball fan, by the way. He's a big baseball fan. I'm a baseball fan, so we kind of bond over sports and stuff like that.
Who's your favorite baseball team?
So it's kind of random, but it's not when I tell you why. Chicago Cubs. Okay. And it's because growing up as a kid, the only thing on TV after school was WGN Cubs. And that's why.
I think that's a story of every 80s kid. Every 80s kid. And they didn't have lights in Wrigley, of course, until the late 80s. And so they played every afternoon. So right after school, they're always on.
Yep. So I'd come home and that was what was on TV. Mark Grace, Ron Sandberg, Andre Dawson, Chicago Cubs. And all my friends
That's
were Braves
smart.
fans, TBS, and I didn't like them because everybody else liked the Braves, so I had to do my own thing. So I like the Cubs.
They played like at 7:05 every night.
Yeah, and David Ross, who had a home run in Game 7 of the World Series to break the curse and was their manager, is my neighbor.
There you go.
Yeah.
Man, I think baseball is just so boring. So, all right, I probably should move on. You guys totally hate me now.
That
It's
was,
all
that was
good.
a little uncalled for, a little unnecessary drive-by jab there.
You recently
great.
did, though, however, Dean, put your Mount Rushmore of shortstops, and Ozzie Smith was not on there, and the backlash you received from Cardinals fans. So now, Cubs fan, no Ozzie. It's coming together here, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's highly overrated.
Okay.
Cool backflips, man. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Okay.
I need you to be at least hit a little bit. I need you to hit a little.
It makes sense now.
Yeah.
This has been a really fun conversation, but let's keep going. All right, so going back to what you were saying about owning your community, you know, a lot of our listeners are going to be pastors who may not be in large cities like yours. They may be in rural communities or small churches across America, and I think all those pastors, and I'll tell you if you listen today, and Dean and Josh, you both can speak to this, because Josh, I know you've pastored all kinds of churches in South Carolina. They call Josh the governor of South Carolina, I think, these days. What kind of advice would you give that pastor? How would you encourage him today?
Oh, I think you're the best opportunity around. I would see yourself as the unofficial mayor of your town, and where you are just out and about. I tell our youth pastor and some of our next generation staff, I'm like, hey guys, you can't grow a student ministry from the office. You know, like, what are you doing here? Kind of idea.
Yeah.
So I would I'm already out and about. Like, I'm in my office right now because we had a scheduled time to record this together. I haven't been here all day, besides the funeral I had to do. You know, like, I'm out. You know, I'm meeting people. I'm at Starbucks. I'm out in Tallahassee. So I would encourage our friends who are in very small towns, rural communities, to really say, wow, I actually can know everybody here. Maybe not literally every single person on it, but I actually really can. You know, so oftentimes there's only one school, and it's a K through 12. You know, I would have it's just my opinion. I would have your family there. I would absolutely have your kids going to school there. I'd be connected there. You know, if your kids are playing sports, I'd coach their teams. Now, I mean, I'm in a medium-sized city, and I've always coached all my kids' teams. You know, my kid plays tackle now for his school team, and I'm one of the coaches. You know, because that's just an amazing way just to be out there and be a part of things. And but I think the smaller the town, I'm like jealous. I think even more of an opportunity to do that, where you can just lock in. Like there's one place everybody goes to lunch. I'd go there every day. You know, like, I would really be, and I know guys that are like that and do that. And it's a really neat thing to see and be a part of. And I would just make that part of what you do. Like, see yourself as the unofficial mayor of your town, of just the missionary. I wish every pastor would see himself as the lead missionary in their community. Like, every pastor of every church in that town, of every town, saw themselves that way. I think that would bring about a true mindset change. And our folks at our church, like, I want the things I'm trying to push them to do in terms of connect and build relationships and say yes to people. You know, in our role where they tell you to say no, I say, no, say yes. If somebody invites you to go to lunch, say yes. If they invite you to go watch a football game, say yes. Like, be with people, you know. I want them to see me actually leading out on those things. And my wife leads out on those things. And my kids lead out on those things. We want that to be just a culture we create. But a small town, to me, is like teed up for you to be able to really do that well and effectively.
That's great. Josh, anything you want to add there?
No, I'd say the same thing. And, like, take advantage of my thing is take advantage of my stages in life. I know Dean and I actually have a similar situation where I have a 21-year-old and an 8-year-old. So I'm going the college orientation and dealing with that, and I'm, in second grade down here. So taking advantage of those opportunities when I'm with my kids out. I've coached all my kids that played in sports, everything else. Just take advantage of it. Meet people where you are and just be a part of your community. With kids, it's easier, but it's actually, then you get in a different stage, like Dean mentioned. Now you're eating in the local restaurants and you're finding the guys to talk to when you got some freedom. So, no, just be present. I've actually pastored in a small town And man, I took great joy in our student ministry or doing something like that when we had 1,000 kids in our local high school. It was the only school, and we could get 350 of them on a Wednesday night to our church. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get that number down. How many can we get here? Because we can take advantage of those situations. So yeah, do what you can to be in the community and be a part of it. And usually, I don't know if Dean, I'm sure Dean has met this as well. Usually the people in the community want you there. I mean, they, unless you're an idiot, they want you to be a part of it and be with them, and they like having you around. So, as the pastor,
definitely, I stay on the sidelines. I'm not the chaplain. I'm not any kind of official role. I stay on the sidelines every Friday night for my school I went to. Mm-hmm. I'm down there, and I'm connected to the coach and the AD, and it's just I just want to be find whatever that thing is. It might not be football, but for you, but whatever that thing is, like lock in, be connected. And be visible. That's a simple word. Just visible. Like be visible and out there, part of the town.
That's good.
That's really helpful, Dean. I know you have. What's unique about you is you served so faithfully in this city for a long time, building your church, being a faithful local church pastor. You've been in the lives of so many people, and it has really afforded you a platform for writing from a specific place of understanding the differences in cultural Christianity and true gospel ministry. You've written books, The Unsaved Christian, Getting Over Yourself. You've written Pure, Why the Bible's Plan for Sexuality Isn't Outdated, Irrelevant, or Oppressive. You've written, your new book is A Short Guide to Church. Give us just a synopsis of why this is such an important topic of your heart. You've lived it. You've ministered in this area. Why is it such a key part of who you are and your message?
Yeah, when I write books, I don't like have some kind of long think tank session or brainstorming session. I'm more just kind of seeing what is out there in front of me locally or online locally and going, ooh, we need to talk about this or this is important. So the Getting Over Yourself book, I was just seeing this very self-absorbed, I call it the Instagramification of the faith. Where the messaging is, basically God wants you to be happy and live your best life and be the best version of yourself and you do you and, all those kind of things. And I'm seeing people I know who are believers liking those posts and things like that, these influencers. And I'm like, oh man, kind of thing. We need to talk about this, about how the greatest blessing of God is God, right? It's himself,
Right.
Our message shouldn't have to change in its core if we went and preached in a third world country tomorrow. In terms of who Jesus is and, what God has for our lives. But the church, a short guide to church, what is it all about? It's a similar manner, right? Just keep seeing in culture, Tallahassee and beyond, that the local church continues to kind of lose its luster in the lives of believers, where people go to church 1 or 2 times a month and would claim to be regular. We call it the perfect storm, and that means that for someone to go to church on Sunday, it has to be perfect weather, but not, good weather, but not perfect weather. Because if it's perfect weather, we got to go to the beach or do something, or go to the lake or play golf. You can have nobody, you can have no company in town. We're old enough now where we go back when we were kids. Back when we were kids, we had company in town, you still went to church. Either they'd come with you or you'd say, we're going to church, y'all want to come? If not, we'll be back in an hour, kind of thing. No one in your house can be sick. To where it used to be if one was sick, then one of your parents stayed home and the other 3 of you went. Now everybody stays home because Billy had a headache. Florida State cannot kick off at 8 p.m. It has to be a noon or 3:30 kickoff. And if all those things are aligned, then and only then, do we go to church. And you hear just common rhetoric. The common rhetoric today is, you don't have to go to church to be a Christian, and that we can have church anywhere. And it's all just kind of the big capital C church, and those type of things, or Young Life is their church, or something. And so I just started going, whoa. That's not God's design. Never has been, never will be. God's design is the local church, for His people. And the book is not some deep ecclesiology. I'm not talking about church discipline. I'm not talking about church government. That's not the point of it. It's really hey, what is church all about? Why do we do these things? What's the point? And the hope is that it can be given to churches to use in their Connect 101 class or membership meeting or those type of ideas. But it really comes from me believing that the local church really is God's design and being unapologetic about that and wanting believers to see that the lowercase c church has always been the number one. It's always been the number one. And it's not a compromise of unity or seeing the big picture. And I think people think that sometimes. If I get too excited about my church, then maybe I'm not as into the capital C church. Just get that out of your mind. That's not true.
Right.
The best way you can be for the capital C universal church is to be really pro the local church. And I want this bill to help people see it again. Because Tallahassee, man, so many people who claim to be Christians, the amount of people who are in church is not very high. It's just not. And so we're trying to do something about that.
Oh, that's good. It's really good. Have you seen any of the things you've written on? Has your church benefited or deployed any sort of new, maybe innovative ideas or anything like that have really helped them think more intentionally about the culture at large?
Yeah, so the book on sexual ethics, the Pure book, which again is not a high-level, seminary-level sexual ethics book. It's a how does every normal day person in Tallahassee approach the sexual revolution and the questions they might have. And so really, I think that book gave people confidence on the matters, helped them able to answer questions, helped them to not feel like they have to apologize or give disclaimers when they tell people what the Bible says. So I think it really hopefully equipped our people and gave them some hope and confidence in how to address these things. The Unsaved Christian, my first book, really became an unofficial evangelism guide. Because for a long time, people have never had the category for cultural Christians. And because of that, they get frustrated with them. Because for too long, we have seen cultural Christianity as a discipleship issue. They just need to get more serious about the faith, get more invested in the church, read their Bible, pray, that type of thing. I'm going, no. Cultural Christianity is not a discipleship issue. It's an evangelism issue. These people don't actually know Jesus. They know some Christian lingo, but they don't actually know Christ. So we shouldn't be frustrated with people who aren't Christians for not acting like they are. Why should they? The three of us are Christians, and we're not always great at acting like we are. Why should someone who doesn't have the Holy Spirit act like they are? So the feedback I got from our church and from other churches that have read it is that it even shifted their evangelism strategy. Because for so long, think about our own tradition. Evangelism training has been in the context of atheists and skeptics who are strangers, where so much training is done about world religions. And how many people at your churches know a Buddhist? Mm-hmm. Not very many. They might know one, maybe. There's one family at the kids' school. How many people in your churches know people who would claim to be Christians but could not articulate the gospel on their best day? And I don't mean that a perfect theological articulation of the gospel is what saves you. What I mean by that is they don't know the gospel. They don't know it.
Right.
So what we try to do is to go, okay, most of our evangelism context, people we already know who think they're Christians and they're not. So again, please hear me now. I don't think I'm the judge of who's a Christian, nor do I want to be. But Jesus in Matthew 7 said, many on that day will say, Lord, Lord. Didn't we prophesy in your name, cast demons in your name, perform miracles in your name? And he said, I will tell them, I never knew you. Away from me. So that really just, I think, opened our eyes up to go, because people can feel guilty sometimes. Like, I want to be more missional. I want to be every buzzword. I want to be more this, but I don't really know any lost people. And I'm like, yes, you do. You're just thinking lostness means atheist, agnostic, other world religion, rather than people in your own town who are generic theists, which does not save. The Book of James, you believe there's one God, great, so does the devil, right? That kind of idea. And it really just kind of opened up people's eyes to go, oh, so you regularly can hear. So a part of our vocabulary here at our church now is, oh, your friend you brought, is that person a Christian? Do they know? And they'll say he's an unsaved Christian. And by that I mean he's not an atheist, not an agnostic. He's a generic theist who thinks he's fine because he's a good person and goes to church on Mother's Day because it makes Nana happy. Kind of thing. So it's been great for our church.
That's really helpful. I think a lot of churches, I know where we're at right now in terms of thinking strategically or more strategically than ever about evangelism. We've benefited from the last 4 years in our community of natural growth because of people moving in and everything, but now because of economy and everything, all the natural growth our community's experienced is slowing because of the price of housing and everything, and it's got me back to the real focus of evangelism and how we're going to teach and equip our people to go out and think more strategically. Since 2020, we've really just kind of been on this, again, huge benefit of community growth, but now it's like, okay, we've got to get back to the core calling of evangelism, the Great Commission, face-to-face, sharing the gospel, and I'm anticipating continue to learn from you and learn from others who are doing it well. I'm hopeful to get to interview in a few weeks Nathan Leno out of a church in Texas who's just seeing exceptional evangelism there, but that's coming up on a future episode.
So our evangelism approach is relationships, people you already know. Open your eyes. and,
Right.
and have conversations. So that's basically what we try to push. I know it sounds so simple, but like that's where our baptisms come from.
That's awesome.
Dean, on the practical side of this too, when you write, I mean, I think your books have been incredibly helpful. Obviously, clearly born out of the local church context, you're dealing with what you're seeing in your body, in your church, seeing that as helpful, and I think that's exactly right. When you preach, for example, would these like these books, would these come out of a sermon series for you, or do you preach through a passage in Scripture or a book of the Bible? Like when you're trying to engage, I've found, especially in nowadays, the more we get to the Scriptures, open up the Word of God, it's like that's what people are actually hungry for, and it seems counterintuitive from what the world is saying, right? So they're wanting this truth, they're wanting these things. So the books you write, are they flowing out of a sermon series for you, or are they flowing more out of just seeing everyday ministry and equipping your people?
The latter. I preach probably 70% through books of the Bible, like right around there. Like we just got done with Galatians. We're in Joshua, kind of thematically through Joshua for the summer. Then I'll do a vision series in kind of every kind of launch of the school year, that kind of idea. But to me, it's more than it is. I've never turned a series into a book before, but the concepts that I write about are interwoven into my sermons all the time. Like, so I'm always talking about things that would fit in getting over yourself. I'm always thinking of the cultural unsaved Christian in mind. When I'm preaching, they're always on my mind. Like when I'm preaching, I know they're everywhere in the chairs. I'm always pushing the significance of the local church when I'm preaching. I talk about the sexual revolution and sexual ethics a lot. It might be 2 minutes in my sermon, but I'm going to reference it and point and talk about it. And so it's more, the things I'm writing about are themes that always are on my mind and happening, and they're birthed out of things we talk about all the time at our church. That's what I put out.
It's good. Which cover is your favorite cover? Just hold on. Which cover is your favorite cover?
Getting Over Yourself. They did a good job.
Yeah, me too.
That's the yellow book.
It's a great cover.
Yeah.
Looking in the hole,
you have a favorite?
looking down.
Yeah, they did a great job with that.
Do you have a favorite book you've written?
I think my best and most important book is Pure. But the one that's by far gotten the most notice and still is selling, thank God, is Unsaved Christian. So I think maybe Unsaved Christian resonates the most, but to me the most important book, the one I had the most enjoyed writing, was the Pure book. And that was kind of my response to all the constant just Twitter and everything else bemoaning of purity culture, where it's just like the end of the world that you had to sign a True Love Waits card when you were 15 and you're oppressed because of that or whatever. And I said, okay, let's just say that everything they say about purity culture is true. Like all the negative things, just for the sake of argument, let's just say it's true. Does that change for even a half a second that God has a clear design, for sexuality? So okay, so it doesn't. So now let's make sense of it and let's think about it and let's talk about it. And so I think that was my most significant, or a book that I probably enjoyed the most. I think it's most important. But Unsaved Christian, I'd probably talk about the most.
What do you think is the you would say is the biggest challenge facing Christianity today? Like the biggest challenge facing the Christianity or the church in general to get today? If you had to pick one that's going to affect most Christians across America and most pastors, what would it be?
I really mean this. Like I absolutely believe this. I think it's the generational drift away from the local church. I really do. So we're grandma and grandpa. So let's just go with our age, okay? So let's just use our age as the base. Okay, grandma and grandpa, like our grandparents, were very much committed to their churches. If they might be Catholic, might be Protestant, like they went to mass, they went to church. They might even be believers, but they went. Right? That was a part of the thing.
Right.
Our parents' generation went for a long time and brought us, but then stopped going more towards the end. It became kind of less of a priority. Our generation, it's like when we can, like we're not anti, but don't think it's that important. We're good people, you don't need the church to be a Christian, that kind of idea. And then the one below that has been growing up their entire lives, missing church all the time because of people having more affluence, right? It's easy to pick on travel baseball and that's just low-hanging fruit. I'm not here to pick about that. The issue is more just how much affluence people have and how much more margin people have, or credit card limits, I'm not sure. But it just allows them to go and just to do stuff all the time. Like vacation has almost become its own religion, right? They just have to always get away, always get away, always get away. And an unchurched Christianity is going to have drastic consequences. So we can point to the sexual revolution all day and digital this and social media that, but a Christian population detached from the local church is only going to make all that stuff all the worse, down the road. So
And the church's answer to that is what's key, I believe, right? I mean, are we going to attract them with a model that's attractional, less theology, less Bible? How do we view that becomes the key on how the church moves forward?
Oh yeah, because the attractional thing might give them the door for 5 minutes, but not as much anymore. And there's outliers to that, and there's certain phenomena across the country, but they're not very loyal to those churches. They just kind of go for the spectacle and for the show. And nowadays, I just don't know a lost person that's going to go, they have a great band, kids, get in the car. Like, they're lost. Why would they care? And so, especially as church becomes more and more socially unacceptable to be a part of, that's just not going to work. And we've seen our church grow the most when we lean in more on, like, we always preach the truth. When we really lean in more, it's not just some internet cliche. Like, the church really does grow when you preach the truth. That's not a guarantee. God does not say your church is going to double in size because you preach the Bible. We're not promised that. But what we're seeing is that our people are hungry. I mean, Tallahassee is a very blue dot on the map for Florida. So there's just a lot of liberalism here. Pride Month is a huge deal here. And you almost see people being attracted, to use the word attractional, not to music and to a pastor dressing a certain way or being funny or anything like that, but a Christian worldview has become a front door. So we're seeing, like, people maybe even that are really conservative politically, but not believers, that they're seeing all the things out there and going, so the Christian worldview doesn't save you. Jesus saves you. But we're seeing a Christian worldview be an opportunity to get the gospel in front of people, including those from the sexual revolution. That the empty promises of, now again, a lot of people from the sexual revolution, they hate us and because we don't affirm and we try to be kind and compassionate. It's like, they don't care. But we're seeing others go, I've tried all these things. Maybe there's something in play there. Maybe I need to pay attention to what they're talking about. And we're seeing people come to church because of it.
Yeah, and I would agree with that and all that. What I'm seeing in these churches where guys are going in and centering all things on the Bible, man, almost every one of them that I know of are growing and booming. Not only that, you're seeing it among college students and the next generation. Like, our student ministry is booming because we're focused on preaching the Bible. We're centering our sermons around the Bible. Are you seeing similar things in college students there? Like, what are you seeing among the next generation in terms of your influence, not only there in Tallahassee? I know you have a larger influence among college students across our country.
Well, what we're seeing is the same thing happen for a generation lower. I mean, they really are being attracted to the Bible. I mean, because they're at Florida State University. I mean, it's almost like half the college exists to get you to leave the faith, to question the faith at best. And we're not seeing this deconstruction phenomena. We're seeing college students that really want to hear what the Bible has to say and are passionate about the Lord. And they don't have to go to a conference somewhere to experience that. They're living that out here. And it's our best sending base. So who are we sending to be a part of church planting teams, international missions? College graduates. I mean, they're the ones that want to go. They're the ones that are excited about that because they're convinced of the truth of the scriptures. So, like, this college generation, I'm seeing them actually lean in more and starting to get the local church. Like, to be a student leader at our church, if we have a big student leadership program for our college ministry, you have to be a member. So we regularly see college students going through our membership process, which is really neat to see, in their 4 years while they're here. And it also affects the generation below them, or I should say the age below them of high school and middle school students. My son, for example, is a rising senior. And he told me, he said that one of his college factors he wants to think about when he gets ready to go away to college is, where is there a SALT network church plant? Because we're a part of the SALT network, which is a Send Network affiliated group that plants churches in collegiate cities, not campus churches, but multi-generational churches with a college ministry in college towns. So he wants to go somewhere where he can go help be a part of a church plant. at that college and that college town. I mean, how cool is that here as a dad, right? Like one of his factors he wants to pick his college is where's a church plant I can go help with. He didn't come up with that on his own. He didn't get that just because his dad's the pastor, but because the culture he sees of the sending and local church emphasis of our college ministry of kids, of students he looks up to. And he wants to go do it with his own life, which is awesome.
Good.
Yeah. Josh, how old is Taylor's First Baptist?
1864, 160. How about that?
And Dean, how old is City Church?
17 years.
Man, Christ Community is like 38 years, I think, now. And it's like we think about our own leadership in this moment as stewards of these churches. Dean, as you think about, I mean, Josh and I are stewarding what's come before us. What's your hope, for the future of your church there in Tallahassee? If you're going to say, here are three things that if I pass it off tomorrow, here's what I hope they would be about.
When you think of Tallahassee one day, I want you to think Capital, Florida State, and City Church. Not because we're special, but because the gospel's here. And we want to have such an impact on our city and reach that many people where it's like synonymous with Tallahassee. I know that sounds crazy, but I've thought that the entire time since we planted, 17 years ago. So I want it to be such a fabric of the city of Tallahassee, this church, that like it's synonymous with our city. And we're seeing in our own little small way that happening. Like we have people that are anything from stay-at-home moms to preschool teachers, all the way to like DeSantis's right and left hands, who are part of this church, and Florida State football coaches, and it's just a really neat reach, of the city. I hope that would be a big one. And second, I want a church that's really faithful and vibrant long after I'm gone. So when we have, I bring in some buddies sometimes to preach, so I want our church to hear from them, and I'll have them here for like longer and have me with our staff and kind of do a couple days with them. But when I'm not preaching, I usually try to have staff members preach. I would say that's 95% of the time, because I want them to be developed. I want our church to hear from them. We will not have to do a national search. I don't know who that person's going to be yet, but we will not have to do some kind of national search when my time here is done, because we have several guys on staff who could step right into it, and be that. And I think that's a great responsibility. Now, I want to pastor a church in such a way where they don't have to go hire a search firm to replace me. Where they can just go, oh, we got these three guys, and not just one guy. We got these three guys that we can pick from and talk to and see. And I think that could be a really great thing. And also, guys, I'm not just saying this because we're conservative evangelicals or whatever. Man, I hope that this church stays, including, and I have to be careful as myself. Watch your life and watch your doctrine, right? The scriptures say that it really does stay, a healthy gospel culture and a healthy gospel doctrine. I want to hold to the scriptures, not budge on anything, but also I want to do it with a smile on our face and actually enjoy doing this and actually have joy and be the kind of people that really love the local church. And I always want to pastor a church that if I didn't work here, I'd want to be a member of. And that's true of our church right now. If I didn't work here, I'd want to be a member here and just serve here. And I want that to always be true. And that's only going to be true if we keep a healthy gospel doctrine and a healthy gospel culture. And keeping a healthy gospel doctrine has not been very hard because we just really believe this stuff, about the Bible. But keeping a gospel culture is always a work. It's always a challenge because you have to keep whatever it is unique about your church that makes Taylor's, right? You have to keep that in the forefront. And so we do a thing regularly. We do it annually called Culture Class with our staff, where we don't take for granted just because you've been here forever that you get exactly how things work and how we operate and what we do and don't do and what matters here, what's non-negotiable, what are things you want to see out of you. And so the neat thing is our entire staff is all from within, every single person. That's not a rule, but it's a preference. So like when we hired our students guy before, he was a high school teacher here in town. And we're like, man, he's already a great volunteer. He's great with kids. He's comfortable in front of people. We know him and trust him. So we sat him down at Starbucks and said, hey, what if you came and became, what if you were our students guy? And he was like, what? And he was shocked by that, but so that's just how we operate here. So I've never texted someone before and said, hey man, really need a students guy. Can you recommend them to us? Or, hey man, really need a whatever. We just hire from within because we have church members here. Now some say no, They don't want to go into full-time ministry, or they like their job, or they can't take the pay cut, or whatever it is. But it's neat that and so I think that's almost the secret sauce here. It's that culture of people who work here, but they were members here before they worked here. It's pretty neat.
I love that, man. Dean, your love for the local church sure is infectious, man. Like, just hearing you talk about it, and I know there's gonna be a lot of guys out there who probably listen and who may be discouraged by their situation, discouraged by what's going on in their churches. How about you two guys just give them a word of encouragement today? What would you say to those guys?
Thank you, JP.
Josh, Dean?
Josh, go for it.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, we're fighting a fight out there. And one of the things I love about Dean is that he is battling in the cultural war. I mean, that's what his books are. That's what he's dealing with. But he's doing it, like you said, with a smile on his face. We can go at this with joy, or we can go at it with some sort of anger involved. I just think it's a choice. I mean, it's like I get up every day. I love my wife. I am in that relationship, but I also choose every day to love her, right? And so as a minister of the gospel, I'm getting up every day choosing, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. This is what I'm after. And I've got to remind myself, even in the hard times and difficult times, man, God has called me to this. This is where I want to be. This is what I want to choose to be. I wouldn't want to do anything else. And so reminding myself of that choice every day helps you fight through some of those difficult days and hard times, and really just the power of the gospel itself. I mean, I don't know of any other force on this. We don't know of any other force in this universe like the gospel. It does have the power to change hearts and change lives. So every day I go with optimism that whatever problem I face can be overcome by the power of the gospel, and whatever, to use a Dean Inserra word, whatever jabronis out there giving me a problem, the gospel can change their heart and change their life.
Yeah, jabronis are definitely an issue. I would say I think you need to turn off the noise. Whatever the noise is out there that makes you think that I have to be like this, or if only I could be like that. You're not supposed to be First Baptist, Grace Baptist, or City Church. You're supposed to be your church, right? And I think that really matters. And I think we need to reset our expectations. It's supposed to be hard. Like, ministry's hard. Like, we're supposed to be tired.
That's right.
I don't mean unhealthy tired. We're supposed to rest too. But, like, we're supposed to come home during the day tired, right? And so I think we need to reset those expectations. And, again, it's that missionary input, that missionary idea again. Like, we don't expect somebody, if they went to India tomorrow as a church planter with the International Mission Board, to have this, like, world-renowned, thriving local church in 5 years, 10 years, or maybe ever. We expect them to be there, to be faithful, to also be fruitful, as in they're getting after it. They can't control the results, but they really are getting after it. Like, they're really trying to have a healthy ministry and reach people and connect with people. And I think we're to the place in this sort of post-Christian or almost post-Christian that's kind of creeping into everywhere across America, where we got to almost like reset our expectations of what is successful and what is not. And if what is successful is comparing yourself to a church, 3 stoplights down, you're going to be discouraged, because guess what? There's probably factors too of why that church is as large as it is. And there's probably some that have different things happening than what your church has, and different hands dealt than your church has been dealt. So I just want guys out there to sort of take a deep breath about that kind of stuff, and also do some soul searching about maybe some insecurities that are out there. If it's jealousy or competition or resentment, just make sure that's not you, because maybe some of the lack of joy you have isn't just because you had a rough finance committee meeting. Maybe it's because there's some stuff going on in your heart, that is resentful or that's bitter, and I think we've got to do that kind of work. But a lot of it comes from turning off the noise and not letting whatever they are saying out there about how your church is supposed to be make you feel like if you're not just like this church here, then you're not worth it. You're not good enough. And I just got to turn that noise off, man. Like, God has you there. Yeah. And also, you don't have to stay there. Like, that's another thing. It's not a job. Like, if it's miserable and there's no end in sight, I'm not saying the opposite of hard. If it's miserable and there is no, like, opportunity to move and to lead, you don't have to be there. Like, just because it's called a local church doesn't mean that you're bound to it forever. So there's always that as well. I hope you stick it out, but I also hope you are somewhere where you can actually lead and make a difference. That's what I would say to that.
Yeah, no, that's good. But both these guys are right. And if you're listening and you really are struggling, and you're just really wrestling, you want to talk to someone about it, please feel free to reach out. Ronnie, RONNIE, at thepastorslab.com. Would love to encourage you however we can. And just want you to know you're not alone in that. I want to encourage you. Hey, guys, let me just say thanks to both of you all. Thanks, Josh, for joining me here. Dean, thank you for the guest time and giving us this last 45 minutes or so, answering the questions. We really do mean that. Appreciate you. Hey, where can people find you at, Dean?
I'm active on social media, on Instagram and Twitter. And it's just my name, just Dean Inserra, Inserra. And feel free to reach out to City Church. You can touch me anytime. I love talking to pastors. Always available.
It's great. I do. Again, I echo. I've read several Dean's books. I encourage you guys to get his books. I just got my copy of your newest one on the church. I don't know where it's at. I think I took it home. Oh, there it is right there. Josh has it.
Yeah.
Got a copy right here.
There it is. Love it. Well, I want to thank everyone for listening today. Hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are listening on. When you do, it helps the podcast grow. And as we grow, we're able to help have more conversations just like this that serve pastors just like you. Thanks for listening today, and we'll see you on the next episode.